They say Magnus Carlsen is a high-level chess player, so he can defeat anyone, even when drunk. Is it true? Let's see how he beats the other chess master after he's had just 5 shots of alcohol and is drunk. Upon starting the game, Magnus's opponent, Damien Ribière, plays whites and starts the game with e4, while Magnus drunkenly responds with c5, the Sicilian defense. As Damien moves his pawn to a3, the crowd starts cheering for him. They do not know what Magnus will do to this poor guy. Magnus plays his pawn to g6 and the players start to develop bishops and knights. Once, Damien takes his white-squared bishop to a2, preparing his strong positions. That means a passive approach. Magnus develops another knight to e7, and Damien plays a4 with a pawn. It's a great move and even Magnus quickly applauds. After blocking white's a4 pawn, some pawns are traded off due to moving g and h black pawns. Damien develops his knight to f3 with the aim of castling. Magnus seems to not care about that. He responds with a3, giving Damien the upper hand. Damien castles. They move queens to d2 and c7. Magnus takes the bishop to d7 while Damien moves the rook to e1, nearing the castle and getting a solid combination. Then Magnus goes to castle queenside. And this is when we see that he is high, as he cannot hold the pieces and operate with them appropriately. He throws them. Time does not play on Magnus' side too, as it inevitably passes by. Magnus is about to lose here. Damien knows this, playing his knight d1 as he wants to influence other squares. Magnus attacks Damien's bishop with a pawn to e5. He makes jokes and enjoys the game, something we cannot know. Damien takes his bishop away from the attack to g3. However, Magnus will not stop his pressure. He pushes another pawn to f5. Besides, they can trade pawns there. Then he drinks another sip of his beer. Damien plays his bishop to h4, making a pin on Magnus' knight to his rook standing on the diagonal. Magnus moves his rook to f8. He neutralizes Damien's attack, thus there's nothing left for the bishop to do. Thus the latter focuses on another area and plays his knight at e3. Magnus gets the desire to keep attacking, thus he pushes his pawn to f4 closer to the knight. What a beautiful pawn chain. Magnus engages the black-squared bishop to f6, attacking the white bishop at h4. The players seem equal. Magnus' prospects to come closer to Damien's king make the difference. However, Damien's chances are still high. With a bit of time on the clock, the end of the game may be unexpected. They start trading. Damien takes Magnus' bishop, which Magnus recaptures by moving his rook to f6. Damien wants to break down the opponent's pawn chain and move his pawn to d4. He offers to trade pieces, which will result in a change in forces on the board. Magnus agrees to that. However, Damien wants to get his queen to attack both of Magnus' rook hiding on the diagonal behind the pawn at e5. After some thinking, Magnus decides to capture Damien's pawn at h5 and thus threatens the white knight on f3. Players trade another set of pawns and Damien attacks Magnus' queen by moving the rook to c1. Magnus drunkenly mutters at Damien, then checks him with his queen to b6. Damien blocks this check with his rook to c5, a safe move as another set of pawns protects the square. Magnus is distracted and laughs, then pushes the rook to d8. That is a colossal blunder. While Magnus had a significant advantage until now, it all vanishes after Damien places queen in c3. He's threatening to take Magnus' pawn with a check. This is another mistake of Magnus taking Damien's knight, which after Damien checks, Magnus can recapture with his rook. Before, Magnus had all his pieces lined towards Damien's king. Now Damien has multiple pieces coming closer to Magnus' king. Magnus captures Damien's queen on c7, and Damien responds by grabbing it with a rook. Magnus and Damien have a completely equal position, but unfortunately for Damien, this is an endgame. Magnus Carlsen is the king of endgames. After attacking Damien's rook, which Damien moves away to g3, Magnus makes a mistake. He pushes his pawn to f3. Then, Damien thinks for a while. He sees the option for the bishop to return to d5 and create a strong alliance with the pawn. It is winning for Damien as it is threatening a check on Magnus' king. With the rook on c7, it is hazardous for Magnus. As Damien sees this, he does it and leads Magnus to another deadly blunder. Indeed, Magnus puts his king to b8. Damien is now winning, as he has the force and power over the position. He is about to beat the world champion. After checking Magnus' king and taking a free pawn at b7, Damien moves his rook to h7. He aims to take another pawn. Magnus uses his outstanding endgame skills to find a move that attacks Damien's king. It forces Damien to respond accurately. In positions like these, Magnus' opponents start to crumble. As Damien responded with his pawn to g3, Magnus got the new plan. moving his rook to f8, threatening to check Damien's king by moving his pawn to f2. Damien moves his rook to a7 to check Magnus's king and take his rook. Magnus takes the rook away from the threat to the safe f6. Damien moves his other rook up to h5, threatening the knight, after which Magnus checks him with the pawn to f2. Then Magnus takes the remaining pawn at g3. No one would envy Damien, as he has only one thing to do, and he checks the king with a rook to a8. He can forever check Magnus's king here, as the latter has nowhere else to move. Then Damien moves his rook back to h1. Magnus knows he can win the game. Starting with black knight g4, Magnus brings his knight into the position and tries creating some threats. He forces Damien's king to go far from the pawn and promote it to the new queen. The task takes a few moves. With the new queen, Magnus destroys Damien. He is cheerful and has fun. As we can see, players shake hands, giving drunk Magnus another dominant win. The game was perfect. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for other chess game reviews. Or do you have some particular games in your mind? Write about them in the comments.